temperatures here floating in my office. How is that? Is the visual coming through all right?
It's okay. It's a little choppy.
All right. We'll just do this for a moment here and bounce back. So we're looking at global sea surface temperatures. So I'm going to go ahead and start to talk to ChatGPT and just have it start to control this visualization. So filter to show 2016 to 2023. So it recognized my voice and it dropped out all of the prior years, just showing these El Nino years, 2016 and now 2023. Filter to show days 100 to 200. Across the width axis is the day of the year, and it just went ahead and filtered to show a certain set of days where 2023 sea surface temperatures have just been off the charts compared to the past. Let's do another visualization here. We're looking at per month temperatures, and instead of trying to describe the content, let me just play with it. Put this on a 3D radar chart. This is actually a very interesting flow, and I've got some videos out that describe exactly what the content is. But now what we've done is the system has recognized my voice. It has looked into our set of templates. Here, let me clean up the UI here. Looked into our set of templates, and I happened to know that there's a 3D radar chart template, and it put the data on a view where we can look down the year, and the distance of the dot from the center line represents its change from the norm. So you can see we've labeled 2016, 2021, we've labeled the maximum value for that particular month. And these are months 1 through 12 around the radar chart. Why don't I stop with the AR video there? But hopefully that gives you a sense of what it feels like to just talk to your data and be able to manipulate it using AI. Go to, where's my Zoom? How do I stop sharing?
So Jason, it recognized your voice. Like if I said a command, it would ignore it.
I'm sorry, ask again.
You said it recognized your voice. Do you mean it's like specific? It would have ignored, for example, a command. Should I utter it?
No, no. Not doing anything as sophisticated as that.
So it recognizes the words, not the owner of the voice.
Yeah. Correct. So we're not developing the recognizing capabilities. We're using the Whisper API from ChatGPT to do the voice recognition. We're not building our own large language model. We're using ChatGPT, which we have flexibility. We can use other models as well, but we're using ChatGPT's large language model. We're using a technology called LangChain also in the back end, and we'll be able to show you some of how that works, where you can upload your own documents. So we're basically applying all of these technologies to what we think is a really interesting, unique use case, as opposed to developing the base technologies that make this happen.
And that said, what Jason showed also works in multi-user. So he was going through a single player experience with him on the phone and sort of showcasing augmented reality. But the real power of augmented reality is when other people are there with you. You have a headset on and you can actually all be around the content at the same time. So while the mobile AR is kind of interesting and novel, not necessarily the thing that people use on a single player experience as often. But we can start a meeting, actually invite people in. You can look at a shared model of contents and discuss around it. And in that case, anyone can ask questions at any time and see the data update. And so it's this, virtual AI assistant that's helping you both on the creation side to create content, but also to understand the content that is there already, to add additional context, do active filtering and some other aspects here that we'll start to dive into. So hopefully that gives some little more context to the AR elements here as well.
So for the structure of what I like to do, I like to show some more functionality. We have 6 or 8 different functional areas that we've implemented. And right now, those are kind of isolated functions that we're getting feedback from users on. So I'd like to show you some of those. And then once you get a sense of what those are, I'm going to come back up to a level and say, what have we built? Why does this matter? What's interesting about this in the world? And why do we think that it's something beyond just another cool little, technology that might not apply to the world's use cases? So I've switched to my computer here, same flow, and I'm going to step through a little bit farther, because what we're actually looking at is the relationship between global land temperatures and sea surface temperatures in the El Nino La Nina cycle. And in this particular view, this is the Oceanic Nino Index, which tells us information about the sea surface temperatures off the coast of South America. And one of the things that we found is really quite interesting is being able to gain new context on any dot. So this is the data that lives inside this dot. It was 2016. It was part of a very strong El Nino. And I can ask ChatGPT to give me more context about this particular data. Tell me how this affected Mongolia. So the very strong El Nino in 2016 had a significant impact on Mongolia. During this period, Mongolia experienced a severe winter known as a Dzud, which is a combination of harsh winter and summer drought. And it caused a really heavily impacted the country's nomadic herding economy, etc. Just that one example starts to open the aperture of what's possible, right? You can take, depending on your data set, if your data set is related to phenomena that ChatGPT would know about in its global, knowledge base, then you can get really interesting, very specific information about the content itself, for like historical information, etc.
Is it appropriate to ask questions now, or do we wait?
Let me go just a little bit farther and then get to some questions, Frank. Thank you for your enthusiasm, though. So we really see that there's 2 use cases here. One is this global access, access to ChatGPT's vast knowledge base. And the other is being able to upload your own documents and being able to query against those documents specifically. The advantage of the global information is that it's global and you don't have to do anything. It just comes, for free as part of ChatGPT. The disadvantage is it can hallucinate, especially around like biographies and things like that. It seems to not do so well. And by hallucinate, that's the word that a lot of people are using to describe ChatGPT just making stuff up and very confidently thinking that it knows something that it doesn't. The advantage of being able to upload your own documents, especially in an enterprise use case where accuracy is extremely important, and maybe the use case is that you're a researcher or you're a organization that's generated a report. You've done some data analysis and now you're showing that data and you have a report that's already written on what has been created. You can query into that report and get 100% accuracy using our LangChain and our own vector databases. I know I'm throwing some terms around. If you understand what they mean, great. If you don't, that's okay too. But the net result is that it can answer questions based on only the documents you upload instead of using ChatGPT's general knowledge, and therefore you can get 100% accuracy. It will never make it up, and it will tell you, I don't know anything about that if it doesn't know about it. So 2 use cases there, I think, are both really interesting for different situations. Let me show you another use case here. So this is our beloved life expectancy data set, and this is extremely hot off the presses here. Bill and Michael have not even seen this yet, so I'm just going to ask it to annotate some interesting aspects of this data set. In this case, I don't need to speak to it. It's just an operation. And it decided that Rwanda was an interesting point, Rwanda 1994, and it created an annotation and called it out. It decided that the life expectancy in Germany in 1945 was another one of these low points. And it's not just looking for minimums, it's actually looking for changes, radical or sudden changes in the data set. And here's another example. It's actually analyzing what happened in Ukraine and saying, hey, this seems, really outside of norms. I'm not sure why we're getting that response, but it's still pretty interesting for it to not only identify that what happened in Ukraine in the Stalin purges and whatever was dramatic, but it's trying to give us even more analysis around it. I'm going to pause there, and so just to reiterate, I think I described, let's see how many use cases I described. I described being able to filter or manipulate the content. So in a way, starting to replace the flow editor with your voice. I showed being able to revisualize, apply a new template, and just take a look at the data in an entirely different way. I showed how do you gain additional context from any data point using either in this case, I showed using its global knowledge, and I showed tell me something interesting in this data set and create annotations based on that. Let's start with some questions, and Michael, I'm going to queue you up to do a couple of demos next, but first some questions and comments.
Hey, Jason, for the internal reference documents, the ones that would hopefully keep any interpretation within the bounds of whatever you feed it, is there any preferred format or structure for providing this reference, or is it as fully flexible as one would expect for something like ChatGPT?
Very flexible. Our very first implementation, as of the last few weeks, is to just allow you to upload any PDF documents. But essentially what we're doing is extracting any text out of the PDF document, or you could be uploading, any sort of text-based document. So I think it's pretty flexible. Word, just TXT files and PDFs are the obvious ones. I'd have to check what other free goodies we got with the libraries that we're using.
Okay, so text. I can't feed it graphs, for example.
We're not trying to do, we're not trying to do analysis of imagery in this.
Or data tables.
So for data, we'll can show some other examples, but right now, our first pass is we're saying we're still assuming that you have a data set of interest. Now, I can show you some a really interesting quick way to get data and to parse it and to get it ready and to get into flow using code interpreter. Over time, we do expect that we'll be able to even have the user say, tell me, find me this data set, and go out and grab a data set, do the pre-processing, and put it into flow. We're not quite there yet on that use case. I think that's going to be a few months out still, but essentially everything that you can do with the flow editor, I hope that we'll be able to control entirely with voice, and particularly be able to accomplish some of these more sophisticated data science tasks of manipulating the data just with your voice. But we'll be leveraging existing technologies for that. I don't think we're building too many new things there.
Thank you.
Michael,
So
if you'd like.
Yeah, I can add. There was one question actually in the chat from Nick. I'll just read it out loud for everybody. Will ChatGPT only cut and paste from data if I query into that report? And it is more of a search and find. So it will just type your words back, or will it summarize what you typed into the report? So I think this is referencing uploading a PDF. And I believe the answer is that it will summarize the answers back, not just give you a verbatim word for word readout from the report itself.
I have a
Jason.
question. I have a question.
Mhm.
And maybe you answer this, maybe this referred to your vector database, but when you pose a query to this combination of your data set and the ability for ChatGPT to go out and get context, what does it reference? Does it reference both, either, or?
Right now, we've built it to do either or. So you get the confidence that you need from your local report, or you get the global knowledge of ChatGPT, and totally open to ideas on how one could mix the two.
I have a quick question following up maybe on the when you're manipulating the actual flow through the editor with natural language. Is there a set of keywords and triggers, and is there a vocabulary that we should use that you have developed for that, or is it just say what you want?
It should be pretty flexible, say what you want. For applying templates, it's kind of nice to know some of the names of the templates that we've got, different visualization types, but I'm continually amazed how well it manages to figure out what to do with all kinds of alternate phrasing and words and language. The way the AI actually works is it does not think in terms of words, it thinks in terms of concepts, and it creates clusters of concepts. So in fact, those concepts, it's so powerful that you can even speak to our system in most any other language, and it will still translate those ideas, perform the tasks, reply back in English. It's not smart enough to know that, oh, I should be responding now in Spanish or whatever, but it will reply back in English and actually do the job. Some of our Russian developers actually speak to it in Russian, and it recognizes it and does the visualization and does it all as though they were speaking English without a hitch.
You alluded to the question. You alluded to it a little bit earlier in saying, how does the data need to be structured? Of course, we know it's structured pretty much if we use the flow editor. You mentioned using code interpreter. Are there some definitions around the structure of the data in order to be able to accomplish this? But that's for another time.
Why don't I show that demo a little bit later on how I've used code interpreter to pre-process the data. I think it's really interesting. It's a pretty quick demo, but let's focus more on what we've built a little bit more here let's come back to that use case if I could.
Yeah, let me maybe jump in real quick and I'll share a few things, but I think at its whole, I think of this as there's two parts to how AI has really impacted flow, seemingly overnight, although it's not overnight, it's over many months here of a lot of work in the back ends. But on one side is the creation of flow. How do I start with a data set or start with nothing and create something that is visually compelling and helps me understand and tell stories around that data? So this is a data set pulling in, this is T-Mobile's balance sheet for the year 2023 here, where you can see the different components of the balance sheets and drill in and ask questions. And then this is over time, that data. And so the thing we're working on, and it's not ready to go for today, is the ability or adding the financial report for 2023 to have context from the annual report, which is this 100-page document summarizing the business and current objectives and risks and things like that, to be able to ask questions around and have a visualization that adds some context. So, on the creation side, we're going from this set of configurations, and I'm scrolling down to the side here. You can see all the buttons and the different areas you can click into, which has a learning curve, right? It has a learning curve to learn how to click all these buttons and what they control and what you can really do. And now that's somewhat being replaced by one button that sort of does everything for you under the hood, and allows you to configure and create these on the fly. And so that idea of starting with the data set, creating a visualization with no real configuration is sort of that opportunity on the creation side. So it opens up the aperture for who can create. You don't need as much expert level insight in terms of building the flow itself, as well as it opens up more of a use case of discovery, that it's not just for creating a story or creating something once you have an insight you want to share with someone, but allows you to have a bit more of that discovery process in looking at the data itself. So that's the creation side. And then on the presentation side, or the sharing side, it unlocks something even more, which in this flow, this is a Y Combinator flow. And so for those that are not familiar, let me just first ask, oops, all right, wrong button. Tell me about Y Combinator. So you can ask a question without context. And so this doesn't look at any of the dots or any of the data in your flow itself, just basically a straight chat interface. And so you can find some information about ChatGPT. It's startup accelerator. It started in 2005, and it's very well known for some of the companies that have come out of it: Dropbox, Reddit, DoorDash, Stripe, Coinbase. And so here in these different colors are the different companies that have gone through and ordered by the current status of those companies. And so one thing that's sort of nice is that somewhat overnight here, when we click on a dot, in this case, I clicked on PagerDuty, which I don't know much about, but is apparently a public company. I can just click this button called Provide Context, and allows me to not actually say anything out loud, but literally just add context for this dot. So it's taking this dot and taking that name of the company, sending it over to ChatGPT, and now we know more about PagerDuty. So this was not data that's in our data set, but is being added into context. And so all of these dots are now interactive, and you can ask additional questions. So with PagerDuty still selected, I can ask, oops, not that one. Who are the founders of this company? And so this additional context now is asking about the founders of this company and coming back. So this idea that you can keep drilling in further and further into the data, and it allows any flow that exists to essentially have this infinite capability to explore the content and look at it through different lenses. And in addition, that you can start to apply these active filters. So let me apply a filter here. Filter to only show companies in San Francisco. And so this idea that, you can dynamically update and change, and actually we're working on the ability to chain these filters together, so you can add compound filters and drill in even further and identify insights in that sense. And that's really applicable for multi-user meetings where you have multiple people that you're exploring something and wanting to drill into additional context and things like that. And it's just one last step here, which is on the creation side. And so this is taking a step where there's no rhyme or no ordering to the data at all, but to then create a visualization. So create a violin chart that takes into account time. And so it's taking this data set and applying one of the templates. In this case, it's applying a template where it's a violin chart. So it's showing the distribution of the number of companies that are in that category. And it's separating them out by time. So the left is a younger company, and to the right is, a newer company to older companies for when they were founded. And so you can see some insights about the size of the companies, where the acquired companies are all much larger here, and that there's more of a distribution of large or of companies in the smaller range that are active but younger. So not a crazy visualization, but just the idea that you can create this visualization without configuring anything on that creation side is really powerful. And being able to, as we add more templates from our community of users, that this gets more and more powerful with each new template and visualization that's created in the world. And then just lastly, thinking about our conversation with AI as just a visual way to represent information and data. Show me different ways I can visualize data. And so here, all we're doing is just capturing a conversation. So you're seeing a node created for that first question I asked, and then it came up with 2 different answers of different ways to visualize data, additional visualization techniques that I can take one of these routes. What are the types of tree maps that are often used? And so you can basically have this conversation where you're continuing to drill in, essentially, and navigate this tree that you're creating. But at any point, you can go back in that tree and go to a different node and go from there. Tell me more about why bar charts are important. And so, this is more of a, in the spirit of experimentation of what can we learn. But one thing we learned from this first experiment was building out in 3-dimensional space, your conversation history is pretty powerful. And it might not be just for, the conversation itself, but more so, and this came up in some of our alpha user testing, was the idea that when you're starting to create these compound filters, that you're keeping track of it all in a hierarchy that you can navigate and look at after the fact. And so that could be something you could actually share with someone, is this set of filters or things you've found within a flow that you can basically save out. So anyways, that's my little quick Y Combinator demo. And I'll just quickly end off here with one last one, which is this is another flow we created many years ago for every tweet that Donald Trump has ever posted in his life. So this is from 2010 to 2021, the time of day that he posted his tweets, and it's all interactive. So you can click on any of these and find more information. The height off the ground is how much that tweet was liked. So the most liked tweet is in 2020 when him and the First Lady got COVID. And so this to me actually is really helpful for adding context, because a lot of these tweets, are seemingly random, but because the dates and what was said, you can actually get more information about what was actually going on at that time. And one question you could ask even is, other context here. Who else in the White House was exposed to COVID-19? And so now it's taking that same data points. Does not, okay, so this is just looking at that tweet, but anyway, so you can start to see how you can explore the data in a multitude of ways, and how this becomes way more dynamic in nature. And you can zoom in and all of those same capabilities that we've gone through before. So let me pause there. I know I showed quite a lot, but hopefully this helps to show how essentially every flow here that we are creating now has this superpower to take your end output and allow anyone to add context, to ask questions around the data that is there. And so these flows that you're created, I like to think of as, I used to need to be there to walk you through it and explain it all and talk you through the story and answer your questions about this visualization. And now I have almost an AI assistant that's there for me, allowing me to answer questions on my behalf that's related to the data, adding contextual data that I wouldn't even have, and that sort of enhances the consumption side of these flows, and I think in a really powerful way. And so thinking of how you can take a report or anything that's asynchronous and being able to share it out is really powerful. And then on the synchronous side, for these multi-user meetings, that we can have more dynamic conversations with AI there to assist us when we need it, but we can still have the same conversation and capabilities of shared multi-user meeting. So let me pause there. Would love to get your questions and any other thoughts you have there.
We're getting a bunch of good questions, and I want to come back to those. But since there was a lot of questions earlier about the uploading documents, I actually asked Tim. Tim from Almaty, Kazakhstan is one of our senior engineers, and he's going to give us just a quick demo to show the process of uploading a PDF and how that looks today. Tim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. This is work in progress. First, the context. Just for the demo, I'm going to upload a report. It's just a T-Mobile annual report. It has a lot of numbers, a lot of data in terms of how business is going, things you would be asking, an assistant to like find, read through, and get information about. In the flow editor, if I quickly jump to that. Yeah, here I'm just in the flow editor. And what I can do, I can go to the data manager, go to the upload tab, click the choose file. I'm going to select the annual report I just showed, just a T-Mobile annual report. It's going to upload it, it's going to parse it, and it's going to get everything ready for question asking basically about this document. So it's going to create a context in which we can ask questions. And then if we bring up, yeah, we can get this one closed. And if we bring up the help menu, the magic help menu, we can ask simply any question, like how much money did we make? And you have an option to direct this question directly into that annual report. So ask question about the file we just uploaded. And if I hit enter, it's gonna think for a second, and then it's gonna give us an answer, which is right. Hopefully most of the time. It is right. It is very context oriented, so contextual. If it doesn't know, or the source material doesn't contain information, it will say things like, I don't know, I'm not sure about, etc.
Beautiful. So
anything I'm missing? I'm not sure.
No, that's exactly what I wanted you to show. Perfect. And you'll notice that it's he's integrated it to our smart help. And where the next step is to actually integrate it into the rest of our system, because the smart help is not available in headset. So it's a really great way to test out the functionality. And if I haven't already emphasized this enough, this is very alpha. Each thing we're doing is an experiment. Each functionality is an experiment, and as we bring these into as we experience them and as we bring these to you guys and potential customers, you start to learn what's meaningful and what's not. But in this case, it's nice to actually see the PDF show what we were just talking about, that we have this ability to build this. Another question that came up, Tim, I'm going to direct to you, which was, can we use other language models other than ChatGPT?
Yes, most definitely the answer is yes. The model we build, the way we build them, we don't really rely on any single model. We are using ChatGPT because of pure convenience, pricing model, availability of the API, but generally we are not bound to it. We can switch to any chat model available, Bing, any other, basically. I mean, they have to provide the API, they have to be open to implementation, but yeah.
On our back end, we're using something called LangChain, which is an open source environment, which gives you access to many of the open source models, as well as ChatGPT right out of the box. And I would expect most models would be compatible with that very quickly if they're not already. And if you've got a custom model, if you're a large organization and building your own model entirely, then getting it to be compatible with that will be quite straightforward. Thanks, Tim. Okay, man, so many ideas here all at once. And I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to do a quick why does this matter? And then just have the rest of the time for questions.
And actually, sorry, before you jump into that, Jason, just I just want to quickly sort of identify the groups of people that are here and sort of some of the next steps on that piece. So some of you guys are here because you have used the flow editor and want to build flows, and you are sort of our target audience to get into the AI server, start to build with these new capabilities. And I think we probably want to show you some of how you build with the buttons and how you actually get there. There are some of you that don't really want to work with the flow editor, but have worked with us in the past or are thinking about using flow in the future here for some projects. And especially for anyone in more the enterprise space or large organizations, we are looking for pilot customers to work really hand in hand with as we're building out these capabilities, and basically to deliver a really knockout flow presentation, but also tune it for your specific use case. So if that's of interest, do reach out to any of us, Michael at Flow or Info at Flow, and we can have further discussions there on how we could get move further along on more of a closed alpha session with you guys. And so for those that are getting into the editor, I put a link to our feedback form. And so we'll be frequently pinging you for getting feedback. We're going to continue to have these sessions every week so that you can drop in and ask more questions, and we'll have more user feedback testing and some other things where we'll show you some of the new things that are coming in as well. But just wanted to quickly acknowledge everyone that's here. And if you guys have other reasons for being here, other interests, do let us know as well. But that's mostly where we've seen people fall, or the buckets people have fallen into in coming here.
We've built Flow not because we thought we knew what the world needed, but because of all of the interests, skills, and resources that people have brought to Flow. So you guys are part of the Flow tribe. Thank you. And we're building this for you, not for ourselves, because we think we're so smart. Let me describe just one big picture and then get to questions. So let's just say, what is it that we have built? Now that you've seen the pieces, I want to just get the big picture. So what I think we've built is an AI visual assistant. Okay, so we could ask these questions of ChatGPT and just get, text, scrolling text, and probably, get a lot of the same answers. We could take our visualizations, work with them in augmented reality and have, our nice collaborative view of these visualizations. What happens when we put these together, the AR and AI? And I would argue that AI makes augmented reality make sense. I could even argue that augmented reality makes AI make sense. Pretty bold claim. Let me see if I can back those up just a little bit. So why does AI make AR make sense? In augmented reality, you have some really significant challenges with interfaces. The keyboard is a pain. You don't have a keyboard, and it's a pain to deal with a keyboard while you're in a headset of any variety. So that, plus you don't really want a bunch of interface all over your view. You don't really want to clutter up your room with interface. So AI, by giving you this massive control system where you have the sense of mastery and control and can manipulate things just with your voice, totally changes that equation. In some level, it's kind of obvious. We have seen it in 100 movies and 100 science fiction movies where you've got an augmented reality being controlled by someone speaking at it. This is, in a way, all we've done is created the thing that's already been invented 100 times over. But it feels, that voice interface gives you that sense of mastery and control and level of functionality that feels really quite different. What's on the other side? Why does AR make AI make sense? So right now, these chat models are generating lots and lots of text. And yes, you can also generate images with Midjourney and whatever, but so set that aside a little bit. If you're working with symbolic information and just creating lots and lots of text, that's a valid way for humans to build mental models, but I don't think it is as efficient in building a shared mental model with your team or with the world, with your audience. And being able to take what's coming back from AI, from a chat model, and ground it, first associate it with data, associate it with something that feels concrete in front of you, and then be able to see, like the conversation that Michael was building, be able to see the conversation develop like a mind map. When you've started to work with it in this way, you and your audience are walking away with something that impacts your visual cortex in a way that a bunch of language does not. And I'm pretty sure that after you've experienced this, that you walk away with a shared mental model that is much more likely to be shared in the minds and the relationships between the ideas and how that all works, much more likely to be shared among that audience. So I think that what this ends up feeling like is much more concrete than just a bunch of words, much more, much greater sense of mastery and control than you would have in, augmented reality without AI. And the net effect just feels like the kind of thing that I and the many different use cases could use every day. And that's why I'm so excited about it. So with that long diatribe, tell me if we're crazy, and let's get to your questions. So, Paulo, what can we assume about the model's real-world references in manipulating, interpreting data? And Michael, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so I just quickly responded. So, we're working on the ability to really do more analysis on data. That's a much harder problem to solve. To create a regression line, to pick out insights from a raw data sets, to create averages, to create new fields and things like that. And Code Interpreter is sort of one of the first forays into doing more of that and how it operates. It's pretty interesting. And we can get more and more into those components, but it does take into account the context of the data. It will ignore latitude and longitude data as an example in analyzing numerics, because it recognizes that isn't a value that's applicable, but it refers to the geography and things like that. So it is pretty interesting how it's been operating, and definitely an area of interest. But I'd say it's we are less advanced there than our ability to do things on the contextual side. So that's sort of my direct answer there. And I wanted to make sure to go back to one question from Sashi on NVIDIA modules. And we don't currently use any NVIDIA modules in the development of this application. I think we definitely have some interest in getting more in touch with people at NVIDIA. And so just curious if you had any more backgrounds on that question, or if there was anything that prompted you for the NVIDIA question.
I will send that to you. I'll write that in my email and share that.
Oh, great. Okay, sounds great. And then Sabrina, to the point on VR headsets, without a doubt, so everything we showed you works in a headset, and actually we've optimized for that with the creation of the new HUD, where you see these buttons sort of right below you. And so in headset, you see those same microphone buttons that you can interact with in headset. And so this verbal interface we see is very necessary. One of the hardest things to do in headset is to type, and suddenly with just using your voice to be able to manipulate and create this content, it feels like the natural interaction that we've been looking for a long time. And so it definitely is in its best instantiation in AR and VR headsets. And yes, so the collaboration piece is there. There are a few bugs, and that's why we haven't been able to show that today for getting a multi-user, but we could literally have everyone in this meeting all in a multi-user meeting where we're interacting with one flow visualization, and anyone can ask a question or apply filters and things like that. And see you later, Chris. Thanks for jumping in. So sorry, that was my
I will
quickly
describe
gone through those questions.
we have done meetings in person at Meta and at AWE a few weeks ago, where we had 3, 4, 5 people in mixed reality headsets standing around the content, which was calibrated into the center of the room. Everybody talking, interacting, clicking, interacting with the AI. Everybody can see anything that everybody else has done. And it was the vision that we've had for the company for a very long time. It felt so powerful and collaborative. There's something about the headsets which enable you to not be looking at a phone, that just enable you to, see through and focus on the people who you are with as well as the content. In this case, it was mixed reality, so it was similar to augmented reality. In this case, we actually had somebody also joining in remote in a VR headset, and we could see their avatar interacting together with us remotely. It was really exciting, the collaborative part of what we built.
So one thought, Jason, is just for this last part of the meeting, just to go through building a flow in the AI server, since now everyone should have access, and you'll have this access and where you can get going or get started. And if there are any flows you've built in our production server already and you want to port them over to the AI server, just let us know, send us an email, and we can help do that move over to the AI server.
Yeah, let's see how quickly I can start from scratch and build something. So this is an article from the New York Times a few days ago, and this was interesting and wild little bit of data. So let's see if I can find that data and work with it. So I'm going to search Google for climate reanalyzer. And here's one you would just need to know. You would need to know that we're actually talking about the daily 2-meter air temperature. That means it's 2 meters off the ground. But since I actually know that, okay, now I have a data set. In Flow, we need CSV format, and all we have is JSON. But okay, let's just start with that. JSON file, it looks like each, it's a long format JSON file. So let's save this to my local drive. All right, now here I'm going to take advantage of Code Interpreter. So if you are a paid subscriber to ChatGPT, to OpenAI, use the GPT-4 model, and if you have access to Code Interpreter, they've been rolling that out over the last week. I first got access on Sunday, so it's hot off the presses. And let's tell it what I want to do. I want to convert a file from JSON to CSV. It probably won't mind my typos. And it says sure. And I'm going to drop in the file. And it uploads, it takes a second to upload, and I can push the button. So what's interesting, in case you're not aware of this, you do not want to try to upload an entire file into a large language model, because it would be too big and it wouldn't be able to deal with it. It's just too many tokens. So instead, what it's doing is it's writing Python code in order to manipulate the file and then spit that back out. So the large language model isn't operating on the file because that would be too slow. Instead, it's writing Python code to operate on the file. So it goes ahead and shows me what we've got. One of the things it identifies is that what does data mean, and this kind of long format is a little strange. So I'm going to say, or this wide format, in Flow, you want each data point to be on its own row, the easiest way. So please convert to long formats. It also used things like name and data. It's not so good. So let's rename those columns. Rename columns to year, to temperature, and day of the year. Let's see how it does. including my typos. It doesn't care. Data frame has been transformed to a long format and renamed as requested. It was confused on the day of the year column. So let's see if it's gonna try to fix that. Now it says it's correctly formatted. You can always open the Python code, and that is the result. That is what we want to see. And it has been successfully created and saved. So we will download the file. And now in Flow, I can go ahead and create new. Said I start from scratch. One of the first things that happens when you create a new flow is that it's going to show you the list of templates. There was conversation about what templates are available and how does that all work. And so I'm just going to select one of these templates, line chart. Seems like it's appropriate. And when you select a template, it has an internal data set that it uses to represent that. But we're going to replace the data with our temperature data. So I'm going to drag that onto the CSV. We have a bunch of not AI, but just smart logic we had built before our AI journey to do the remapping of data sets. So it did something pretty interesting here. I think it didn't quite get it. It did know the year. It put the year on the width axis. That's a good thing. But instead of life expectancy, it put day of the year on the, so the height axis, let's go ahead and make that the temperature, and the width axis, we'll put it on the year. And with that, oops, I didn't get it. I'm sorry, the depth axis should be the, hold on here. On the width axis, I want to be the day of the year. Here we go. Okay, so now I've got that same structure. You can see it working pretty well. To show you how the ChatGPT works. I know we're running out of time, but I'm almost done. When we create a button on the AI server, you get this ChatGPT model, ChatGPT little section. I'm going to tell it I want to manipulate this swarm. I'm going to use GPT-4. And what I would like it to do is I'm going to edit the presentation. Forgive the little weird bit there. It's going to put a couple of variables into the environment to know what to do. These variables will either get data out of whatever's been clicked on, or just the data or the information that you speak. So, and I know I'm moving a little bit fast there, but basically I've created this button which enables me to edit the presentation. Let me just name it that. Edit. And it's in this new head. So reduce the height by 50%. If you know the flow editor, you know that I could do that without speaking to it. And it looks like it reduced it by something more like 5%. So let's just try that again. Make the height 0.5. This is alpha, so it's doesn't always do exactly what we expect, and we're learning to increase the likelihood here.
Yeah, it looks like it reduced the height by a factor of 50 rather than 50%.
Right. Okay, so I'm just going to move forward on that. Let me try one other thing. Change the color gradient to be blue to red. Which it just did. Okay, so with obviously there's much more that can be done and to do here, but hopefully that gives you a sense, at least a quick sense of how to create these buttons and how to start from scratch and even use a little code interpreter to process the data into a format that Flow is happy with, where each row is its own data point. I can just pull that up and show you.
And one quick thing for those, when you're going to log into the AI server, it will start out in simple mode. So you actually won't see buttons available. And so in order to get access to buttons, you're going to need to go from, it will start in simple mode, but you're just going to need to click advanced UI. And then to add basically these ChatGPT components, you're going to need to create a button. And once you create that button, you configure it here in this ChatGPT section, and you're going to want to make sure to click show on HUD. We've had issues where it doesn't work unless you show it on HUD. So just another sort of tip here to get going. And so all the actions are in that action for response, and the variables you have access to are spoken inputs and selected node. And so I pasted into the chat window the documentation of where to go to experiment with that. We've posted some on our featured page for the ones we've shown you, so you can copy those and use those as sort of background to understand how you can create your own. But do reach out as you have questions in building your own, or even just commentary on what you'd want to build, and we can help you brainstorm on how to get there. In addition to the more enterprise outreach of us working more closely together. So really appreciate all the time, everybody. And it was great to hear your questions, and hopefully you're as excited as we are for what this means for how we're able to understand and communicate with data.
I have more time and can stay on as long as anybody would like. We are doing these sessions twice a week on this morning time, and then also at 5:30 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday evenings. There'll probably be pretty much a repeat of this session, so no need to come to both of those. But you can also just spend time with us. Jason at flow.gl, Bill at flow.gl, Michael at flow.gl. Our emails we're really available and need to learn how we can use this, and we absolutely are looking for partners to help us build out our first implementations in the real world. So get in touch. And yes, you can share these sessions openly with others. This video will very likely be posted on YouTube, and there's some discussion going on our Discord channel as well. So I'm happy we'll make sure we get you an email with a set of those kinds of links, because you guys are all part of the journey now. Any final words? And if you'd like to stay on, I'm here. Thanks, Sabrina.
Well, thanks, everybody. I'll stop recording.